They're escaped prisoners.
Everyone. Thieves, bandits, fighters, and brawlers.
Desperate men.
Desperate as you'll ever see.
Good. Those are the kind of men I need.
You'll need. See, these men follow no man but me. And I follow no man at all.
Welcome to Film and Page. I'm Dominic, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the 1983 film Crawl, starring Ken Marshall as Colwyn, Lisette Anthony as Lissa, Freddie Jones as Ynir, Frances Annis as Widow of the Web, Alan Armstrong as Torquil, Liam Neeson as Keegan, Robbie Coltrane as Run, and David Batley as Ergo, written by Stanford Sherman and directed by Peter Yates. Produced by Columbia Pictures and Barclays Mercantile Industrial Finance. So this is a movie that I loved as a kid. So the first time I seen Crawl was back in 1984. And the reason I know that is because it was released in 83. And in 84, we had my parents had cable TV. And for a while, we had the Superstation. So if you don't, first choice, Superstation. So if you don't know what that is, back in the 80s, that was like the 80s version of Netflix, the Superstation. So what it was an additional channel, a subscription that you could pay for as an add-on to the regular cable package. And so how it would work was each month, they would have a set roster of movies that they would play over that month. And then the next month, it would be a different roster of movies. But now the movies they played would always be like a year behind. So like all the movies that they played in 84 were the movies that came out in 83. So that's how I'm pretty sure I saw this movie for the first time. It was during the summer of 1984. And I saw it a few times during the summer, because they would play it like multiple times throughout the month before it went away and they changed over to a new roster of movies. And I absolutely loved this movie when I was a kid. Absolutely loved it. And saw it quite a bit when I was a kid, but then went for a very long time before I saw it again. And I didn't see it again for probably almost 20 years until I was an adult. And so there were certain parts of it that didn't age so well because I had gone so long without seeing it, and I kind of remembered certain parts of it differently than what it actually was. And now the other interesting thing about this movie is over the years, it's kind of getting a bit more well-known now because of the internet, but for a long time, this was a movie like no one heard of this movie, and I never met anyone who had seen this movie. And even though it kind of gets more talked about now because of the internet, it's a movie that got like pretty much memory hold. You would hear about all these classic fantasy films of the 80s, like Willow, Conan the Barbarian, Beastmaster, all these ones. Highlander that became these cult favorites. But this was one of the ones that was never talked about. And no one had seen it. Everyone I would run into that were in the movies, I would mention this movie to them, and no one could remember it, and nobody's seen it. So it was a movie that got memory hold for a while. But it seems like it's kind of coming back a little bit over the last, 10 years or so because of the internet. More people on YouTube and stuff have been reviewing the movie and talking about it, and there's been websites doing articles about it and things like that. Also, it's one of those movies that now, as an adult and I rewatch it, it's one of those movies I wish had gotten a sequel. Or you could still do a sequel to it. But, of course, they probably won't because when this movie came out, it completely bombed. I think the estimated budget when I was reading up on this movie was $47 million. And it only made, like, worldwide, just shy of $17 million. So it completely bombed, so there was no sequels, nothing like that. Even though when you watch the movie, there is things in there to set up a sequel. But back in 2019, the Russo brothers were doing an interview, and they had shown interest in actually doing a remake of Crawl because they both liked the movie when they were kids. Now, that might have been news that would have excited me maybe years ago, but when it comes to remakes now, I don't know. I don't really have much faith in Hollywood. But I mean, the Russo brothers have made some solid movies, so if they're in charge of it, maybe it might be good. But I would rather, instead of them doing a sequel, instead of them doing a remake, I would rather them do a sequel to the original and kind of get the story that is set up in this film to be the sequel that we never got. So that's my background with this film. So a little bit about the plot. So this movie has a very straightforward plot. It's a story idea that has been used a lot in fantasy and fiction. So you have this planet Krull, and it gets invaded by these creatures from another world, and they are led by the Beast, and he has this army, and his army are called the Slayers, and they arrive to Krull in what is basically a spaceship that converts into a fortress when it lands on the planet, and it looks like a big weird mountain, and so it comes to their world from somewhere else. We don't know the origin of the Beast or what their home planet is like or where they came from. They come to Krull and start to invade the planet, and they start launching their armies out of Slayers to start killing and ravaging and taking over the villages and things like that. Now, Krull is divided up into two kingdoms, and these two kingdoms have been feuding. So now with these invaders, the Beast and their Black Fortress, now these two kingdoms have to somehow form an alliance, even though they were ancient enemies. So how they do that is the Princess Lissa and the Prince Colwyn, they're the children of the two kingdoms that have been feuding. They get married, and this is how they form an alliance. So, and this is how they're going to maintain the alliance. But unfortunately, on their wedding night, where they're getting married, the castle that belongs to Lissa and her family, that castle gets invaded and attacked. And the two kings of the two children, they're both killed off. The Prince Colwyn, he's left for dead. And the princess is kidnapped by the Slayers and brought back to the Black Fortress to become the bride of the Beast. And so then, the next morning, this old wise guy, like the Obi-Wan Kenobi figure of the story, he comes down, revives Colwyn, and then this is where the story kicks off. Now, Colwyn has to now, with this guy's help, go on a quest to find a way to save the princess from the Black Fortress and destroy the Beast and save the planet Krull. That's it. That's very, very straightforward story to it. But it works. It's a very good movie. So some of the things I liked about this film. So after having rewatched it multiple times over the years, one thing that has really stood out, and it is easily the best thing about this movie, is the James Horner score. This is like a home run score. It is a fantastic score. Easily the best thing about the movie. It sounds like a fantasy score. It just heightens the movie. Totally heightens the movie. It's one of those things that kind of makes me wonder how much a score has to do with the success of a film. Like, if this had a really bad score, would I like this movie as much as I do now? I don't know. I don't think I would, because there are some weak aspects to the movie, but I think the score really elevates it. So that's the best thing about the movie. The second thing is the glaive. That is a cool fantasy weapon, and it's not like a sword or anything. It's unique, and it is designed amazing. The design for the glaive is amazing. Awesome looking fantasy weapon. I love the glaive. The other thing, really good cast for this movie. You got Alan Armstrong, who plays Torquil, one of my favorite characters in the movie, and an early film appearance by Liam Neeson, who would later on become one of my favorite actors in film, and Robbie Coltrane, that would go on to be in the Harry Potter films. And you have two actors in this that would go on to be in the '84 Dune, Freddie Jones and Frances Anna. They would go on to be in David Lynch's Dune the next year. So really good cast. And the story is a good story, even though it's an idea that's been used a lot since then. So it might have been worn out even in the 80s, but there was this kind of like big craze because Star Wars had just came out, and they kind of went with that idea of going to a fortress, rescuing a princess. So this is kind of like cashing in on that Star Wars craze, this movie. And then just the overall design of the film, I think, is really good. Like the Slayers look really cool. The Black Fortress, I think, is pretty good looking, and even the costumes look good. Like they don't just look like costumes of the past or how people would have dressed. They do have like a fantasy look to them. So they do have like an otherworldly look, but still recognizable enough. And the other thing, the way, especially the castle in the beginning, where the Slayers first attack them, that castle, it's medieval, but with somewhat, even the armor that the knights wear and stuff, it's medieval, but it has like this science fiction element to it, or a science fiction edge to it. And this film has a science fiction edge, because the Slayers have almost like laser weapons or laser lances that they can shoot, that kind of gives them an advantage over the good guys. And then they arrive from another planet, and they talk about beings from other planets coming to Crawl and things like that. So they're aware of other planets on this, so there is somewhat science fiction elements to it. Now some of the things I didn't like. So one of the things I don't like about the movie, and this was something that totally went over my head when I was a kid, and even the first time I rewatched it as an adult, I didn't catch on to it. And I didn't catch on to it until it was pointed out to me. And it was pointed out in the director's commentary. Because they had several actors doing the director's commentary for this film when I first got the DVD. And I bought the DVD for this. It would have been like early 2000s, like 2001, 2002. And so the actress, Lysette Anthony, she talks about her time on the film. And then she points out that she was really young in the film. And so I think she was like 18, 19 when she was in this movie. So for some reason, they didn't want her to have like a young sounding voice and combined with her accent for some reason. So they had an American voice actress dub her voice over. So now when I watch the movie, now that it's been pointed out, I notice it every time and I've seen this actress in other movies since then. So I know what she actually sounds like. So now the voice doesn't match the actress at all, because you have this young actress that's 18 or 19 at the time, but she has the voice of like a woman who's like 35 years old. So yeah, and the voice doesn't match the person at all. And the other thing is, it's one of those things that when I watch it now, it's kind of a weak aspect of the movie, but it was something that when I saw it as a kid, I thought was totally cool, and I remembered it being way cooler than what it actually was until I see it as an adult. And that's the design for the beast. The creature in this movie, I think, is kind of weak. It looks kind of stupid now when I watch it. Like, it has this big bulbous head, these kind of like big ears, and I don't know, it has this weird, almost like a burned monkey look to it. I can't even explain it. There's a picture, it looks like, what it looks like to me is there's a picture of some guys, these hunters, and it's an old black and white photo of people who claim to have killed a young Bigfoot or a young Sasquatch. And they have like a stick propped in underneath the thing's jaw, and it's kind of stood up between these two hunters, and it's like this weird looking like ape or dead monkey body, and it looks a lot like the beast in this film looks a lot like that thing. That's what it makes me think of when I watch it now. So that is something that hasn't really aged well. But as far as like fantasy movies of the 80s go, I think this is a really, for me, I think this is like a kind of like a under the radar classic that never became a big well-known classic like some of the other ones, like I said, like Highlander or Willow or anything like that. But it's one of my personal favorite fantasy movies from the 1980s. And it's one of those movies that I would have liked to have seen them do like a sequel to it, either in the early 2000s or the 90s. I don't know about now, because I don't know, I haven't got a lot of faith in Hollywood to make anything good anymore. But if it had come out back then, I think it would have been pretty good. It would have been cool to see where the story would have continued on. So this is definitely a movie, if you're a fan of 80s fantasy films, you've probably already seen this, or if this is one that has slipped underneath your radar, definitely give this one a try. So that's everything I got to say in this video. Let me know what you think in the comments section, and I will see you at the next one. I'd like to say thank you to all of my subscribers. I appreciate you all in helping this channel grow. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, don't forget to hit the bell icon so you'll be notified when new videos are uploaded.